everyone. Welcome to the Bookstore Realtor Episode 3. I'm Kelly Spitzer with Century 21 Elite Realty and Second Story Books in Durango, Colorado. And today we are talking about Charleston, South Carolina. We recently took a trip there for our 20th anniversary, and it was really amazing. I'd never been anywhere over on that side of the United States, so it was a fun adventure. I'm going to show you around some of the architecture there here in a minute. But first, I'm going to dive into the books that I bought. And I've been really into these Images of America books. They have them for all over the country. So this one is about Fort Sumter, which is where the Civil War, or where they claim the first shots of the Civil War were fired. And it's right in Charleston Harbor. So I brought that one back. And another Images of America from Sullivan's Island, which is just a small island to the north of Charleston, really close to the city. It's visible from the city. So it's about a quarter of a mile wide and 3 miles long. And Edgar Allan Poe liked to write about it. He referred to it in his story, The Gold Bug. And apparently they say if you are an African American here in this country whose ancestors were slaves, they most likely came through Charleston, or Sullivan's Island, rather. So this area has, of course, very checkered history. The third book, I actually found this in my store. I didn't even know I had it until I got back and found it. Charleston. Have not read it yet, but super excited to dig into that. I'm one of those people who, I like to go somewhere and tour it, adventure it, and then read about it. It just makes more sense to me and process things that way. So if you haven't been to Charleston, go check it out. And we are going to take a quick tour of the homes and the architecture down there. The first house you see here is a Charleston single house, and this is the yellow house. It has a narrow side that runs along the street and then a longer side, which is typically 5 bays, that runs perpendicular to the street. So that's the side with all the porches. And you see a lot of these in Charleston. They're well suited to the long, narrow lots that were laid out in the early part of Charleston. Here's a couple pictures of a few more single houses. You can see the porches off to the side there. And this is in contrast to what's called a Charleston double, where the front of the house that faces the street is much wider and the porches are also on the front of the street. The first video here is an example of a lot of the cobble streets that are throughout downtown Charleston. I have no idea how old they are, but they are very cool. And then we're moving into the homes along the Battery, which face Charleston Bay. And as we go around the circle, the last house you see is actually for sale. And it looks like a pretty big fixer-upper to me. There's a huge crack along the top that spreads out from that window. Curious how much that costs, but alas, I did not look it up. This last video is of the Williams Mansion. You can take tours of it. I don't think they were operating on the day that we were there. And this was built by some businessman. It's 24,000 square feet. No joke. It looks gorgeous. Someday I'd love to go back and tour it. Running back over to Sullivan's Island real quick. This is Battery Gadsden, and it's a historic artillery battery built in 1903 to 1904. And the really cool thing about it is the Sullivan Island Library, the Edgar Allan Poe branch, is located inside of this artillery battery. Headed over to Mount Pleasant, this is the Boone Hall Plantation, and it's one of America's oldest operating plantations. They still grow crops there today. The drive into the main plantation house is through this gorgeous grove of old oak trees. Some of them are several hundred years old. I want to say they said the oldest one was like 500 years old, but honestly, I can't remember. And then off to the left of this grove of trees is where the old slave housing was. So a lot of history here. Some of it was not always admirable, but there's the Boone Hall Plantation, and it's definitely a very interesting place to visit with some gorgeous gardens. Last but not least, we visited the Charleston Museum, where I geeked out over this 1934 to 1935 edition of Birds of America. This was part of a subscription series. It was a 4-volume set, and there was 12 prominent men in Charleston who subscribed to it. So if you're in Charleston, definitely check out the museum. I'm not a huge museum person, but this one was pretty interesting. And that'll wrap up our Charleston edition of the Bookstore Realtor. Thanks for listening. And as always, you can visit me at 862 Main Avenue at Second Story Books, or 813 Main Avenue, Suite 308 if you want to chat real estate.